What's up? Welcome back to What's Right. This is Garrett Bryan, and my guest this week has music anywhere you can find it or illegally steal it. He'll probably just give it to you. He's a really nice guy. We talk a lot about writing. We talk a lot about performing, the difference between a gig and a show. Those are big differences. And you can find his tour dates on musicbyandrewholmes.com. He has a newish album out called Garden that he was nice enough to let me play some key stuff on. So anyway, enjoy it. This is Andrew Holmes. Yeah, I like to wear a lot of that stuff, but I mean, I'm wearing black today.
Right.
I guess I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just going to be a floating torso.
Yeah.
And then
I really wanted to do like green screen behind it, but I don't know what I can put something random at all times just happening.
Just have a YMH live video going on in the back.
Well, and like how Tom and Bert, they have this screen on Two Bears. They have this just TV behind them with the logo on it. Like I was gonna do that,
And then just have Gage in the corner, like typing shit up.
Well, and I was gonna do it.
You seen that video?
Yeah.
Pull that up.
Yeah, exactly. But I was gonna do it kind of for that. But I was also gonna do it thinking I was gonna like help Gage in the editing process of it all.
Yeah.
And he was like, it would be easier for me to just like put it on there, like not have anything there.
That'd be cool.
The more we were talking about it, the more I realized like I don't know anything on the video side of it all, which I already kind of knew. But it's like when it comes to editing it, it's just like I thought everything that I thought I was doing to help was making it harder. But anyway, I love you and I love your songs. You did really great last night.
Thanks, dude. I feel like I was just kind of getting through it until y'all showed up, and then I was like, oh.
Were you going for like an hour before we got there?
Yeah, hour and a half, something like that. Some gigs are different than...
Yeah.
Some gigs are gigs,
Yeah.
and then there's shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how quickly a gig can turn into a show as soon as you have one willing participant.
That is so true.
Yeah. So whenever you and Hayden showed up, I was like, all right, cool.
Like,
And it kind of turned out to be like a little family reunion thing for me because my parents are moving to Colorado. I think I told you that.
yeah.
But so like my aunt came out who never drinks or comes out, and she drunkenly slipped me like $40 last night, which was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Was that whole table your fam?
Yeah, all of them. And then my cousin has like she didn't date a whole bunch, and she has like a new serious boyfriend, and so we all get to meet him. And
That's cool.
cool.
Was your relatives the one that was like, you shouldn't maybe do those high notes?
No.
Okay.
Man, so no, there's this kid who came up to... I think he just wanted to... I should preface this by saying like 5 years ago, that Andrew Holmes would have been a lot more forgiving of that kind of stuff. But I just have no patience for it now. Like, if somebody drunkenly comes up to me and says something, I'm just like, hey,
Shut up.
yeah.
Where do you? I have that too now.
I just don't care anymore, and it takes 10 years of that kind of BS. I think.
Yeah.
To,
Okay. That's what it took for me.
yeah.
I used to be such a people pleaser, and now I'm not even in my personal day-to-day life. I'm not even. I'm like the opposite of that now.
Yep.
Just because of dealing with that for a decade.
It's useful, I think.
I definitely.
Because I don't think I would have come to that naturally. I wouldn't have come to that ability to be like, you don't matter in my life.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
That is it's healthy. Getting there was like frustrating because like in the beginning when you're just trying to please whoever it is that's whoever's attention you happen to have at the moment. It feels like, oh wow, like what am I doing? I thought I was doing pretty good. No, I don't know that one song that you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. It's like you said, just like a decade of that happening. It's every time that you go to play somewhere that doesn't have a stage that happens. You know, when there's no like barrier between you and someone eating chips at the table right there. Like that's I think that's the difference between like maybe the gig and the show or whatever. Like that you were talking about a minute ago, or like, you know.
I think the delineating factor is food. That's kind of been my analysis. Is like
food shouldn't be around.
No, when people eat food, it's a communal thing. You know, like it's a social practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Drinking, you can. Sometimes I guess like if you drink too much or something, you become louder and more social. But for the most part, you go like buy drinks and stuff. I don't know. It's like our society for a long time has used drinks in coordination with entertainment.
Right.
And so that's kind of built into the culture
it's like,
of drinking.
Yeah, it's already there.
But food for forever has been like, let's sit down and let's talk. You know
right.
what I mean? And so like if you're with a group, you go out with, 3 or 4 people and there's food involved, like you're going to talk. That's like you're programmed to do that.
That's
it's
right.
been so ingrained.
That's right.
So pretty much any place that we did a So Far Sound show recently, and it was hosted at, I don't know if they'd want me to say where it was, but it was hosted at like a restaurant kind of chain that they kind of partnered up with for a little while. And the lead of So Far Sounds was like, man, this audience is like not paying attention at all. And you've done a So Far Sound show, and for people who don't know who that is, it's like they put on secret concerts and secret locations in like every major city in the U.S.
It's very
and across the world. It's super cool.
Yeah.
And everybody is always like tuned into what's happening.
Yes.
And it's pretty rare to have an audience where they're like, not really paying attention.
Right.
But that was kind of happening at this particular show because it was at a restaurant chain, and the bands that were playing that night, I was just running sound, I wasn't playing, but the bands that were playing that night were phenomenal bands, like blowing me away, but nobody was paying attention
because everyone was eating.
And the person came up to me, the So Far Sounds lead, and was like, man, this audience, right? And I was like, it's because there's food involved.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's the reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been so tired of doing the West Texas brisket circuit. And that's why, like that's why. It's not like, it's usually like the people that work there are usually pretty dang cool. Mm-hmm. And
you always get treated well.
But by the staff, but the crowd is like cut in half by like, so and so's going to be playing at this place. Let's go listen to them. And that's half of them, and the other half are, like you said, they're just eating and talking.
Yeah.
And when there's booze involved, they're eating fast and talking loud.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll tune in pretty much only whenever you do like a iconically sellout kind of cover song.
And even then, sometimes if you like, I don't know, like not too long ago, I was in that situation and I was like, let's just see, and I did something like that, just something old and hacky that I knew everyone would, just like a bar banger or whatever. And it wasn't much
really
different, and I don't know, it wasn't enough different to be like, okay, that's what I'm doing for the rest of the set.
Right.
It was a good like, it showed me like, okay, they're just reacting like that to anything.
Yeah.
And so might as well use this time to do you.
You know what? Actually, now that you say that, I've been noticing that at gigs lately too, because I've been learning more covers because I wanted to see if there was a different kind of reaction to those kind of shows, and there really isn't.
No.
I think you're right about that. But I think that maybe what I want to start doing is, like, we've talked about this a lot over the years because we do the same stuff, where there's, when you rely on songwriting as, like, that pays your bills, that brings in your brings home the bacon or whatever, like you kind of have to prostitute yourself out to barbecue spots or chicken joints.
Well, yeah, you have to do this life of an artist. You have to accept the moments when you're trading in your artist badge for like a beer salesman's badge.
Yeah.
You're not really an artist here. You're not even here for artistic expression. You're here because you have a water bill. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, it's like, you're right. I didn't really come here to speak my truth.
Right.
I came here because I have obligations, and you answered the phone and said yes. Right. That's why I'm here. Because I called a bunch of cooler places. They didn't call me back.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
This is option 5. But
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
Down to the wire.
Yeah. This is plan C. I didn't drive here really thinking I was going to be like able to have a platform for anything. So like when that moment happens and you acknowledge that moment, and you lean into like, okay, well, I am here doing this. Mm-hmm. Let's lean into that, at least for them. So at least somebody walks away with something. And then when you're met with the same thing, it's just like, well, I'd rather just play my shit. If you're gonna, I don't know, if you're gonna treat a Toby Keith song like this, I didn't want to play that song anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want to play that song anyway. Yeah. I thought you wanted me to. Yeah. You asked for it.
If that doesn't jazz you up, then
that's not, yeah,
then we'll do what jazzes me up. So
exactly. Yeah.
So it's not your board and I'm
and
bored.
A lot of the times, if I allow myself to lean into jazzing myself up, if anyone happens to look over, it is kind of contagious. Yeah. But so is me dreading whatever fucking banger that I'm playing that they wanted to hear.
So
you know,
true, man.
They can look over, and even if it's a song they like, and be like, "This dude does not want to play this song."
Yeah.
And I don't have it in me to pretend like I do anymore.
Yeah, I'd say the benefit of doing those gigs, like gigs as opposed to shows, right? And I'd say the benefit is like it could be, or I guess what I've been convincing myself for a long time is that it could be an opportunity to get paid to practice. Yeah. Maybe your showmanship or stage ability or whatever. The problem is every single time I get up there and I'm, playing at a fucking taco shop or something like that, I'm like, I don't really care to practice anything right now. Right. I'm just going to get through this. It's 3.5 hours of playing. My hands are on fire and, my vocals are tired and I got to save them for the one show I care about this weekend. Yeah. And so I'm at this place now where I go, the cost benefit analysis of being able to get paid to do stuff like that, it's not really working out, I don't feel like, because whenever I do end up getting those shows that are shows and people are tuned in, and that's when you get like this, it's so backwards, man. It's crazy to me that you have those shows. Well, let me finish my first thought before I jump over that, but whenever I do a bunch of gigs, right, and then I have like 1 or 2 really, really solid shows where people are tuned in throughout the month, it's like those shows I'm rusty for because I'm so used to not connecting with what I'm doing, right, that when I do, I'm like, man, if I were practicing this all the time, my stage presence would be, exponentially better. Because I'd be able to practice like the comedy and the rat-tat-tat between me and the audience and
just the rhythm of it all.
The rhythm of it, the stories. Yeah. I will say that that's something I really respect about you. Like even last night when you hopped up to play a short set during my gig, you got up there and you still told stories and you were like trying to connect with the audience and stuff like that. And I know what that's like to be behind that mic and every eye is not looking at you and 100%. You're still talking into the void. Yeah. And I just don't do it anymore. Yeah. And so I recognize that with you and I go, I feel like you still do practice for shows. In that space.
In that space I do. Yeah. Like just in what you were talking about last night. Yeah. I have a few things to do this weekend, and I utilize that 15 minutes. Yeah. To like kind of work on whatever would help me this weekend, Yeah. And I knew I was watching you. Me and Hayden were and your family, who was right beside us. We were the only people really engaged in what you had to say. Right. Because that's just a gig. And so I knew stepping up there, like, I probably wouldn't even have that, because that's your family. You know what I mean? I had you and Hayden looking at it. That's it. And so, like, I'm not really going to, quote-unquote, impress you guys. I'm not going to show you guys something I haven't already shown you before. But I am going to utilize the 15 minute, I'm going to utilize the 3 songs to, like,
like you said, I'm just doing it into the void because I'm looking around the room. No one's looking,
Right.
and no one's listening, and everyone's talking and eating, or watching a game, and I'm still like I'm still winding it up and throwing it. No one's hitting it back to me,
Right.
but I'm still like it's still like pitching practice, you know, like and like I think to use that analogy, it's just like when you're at the gig, you're practicing without a batter. And when you're at the show, you have somebody walking up to the plate to hit it back to you.
I think maybe I've practiced for a long time, maybe my like guitar and vocal chops during that time.
Right.
But I don't.
I think that's what people thought to mean when they told you to like use that time to practice.
Yeah,
it's like, well,
maybe
yeah, I'll
so.
work on something on the guitar. I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
you're
but
good.
Like, but like, yeah, I'm working on something other than that.
It is.
I can work
the
on that
typical
here.
practice. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree. It's juxtaposed though all the maybe the negatives of gigging, and there are plenty of them. There's also positives, and you and I know that. But like last night was cool because like nobody's paying attention. I'm playing covers, I'm playing originals, but I also had like 4 or 5 people come up to me and say, really great job or whatever.
Right.
And then I had that one kid that was, I think he was maybe a little off kilter maybe that night or something. I don't know. But he came up and was like, hey, I heard you weren't hitting those high notes, so I was singing them for you. I think what he wanted, though, I think he just didn't know how to convey that he wanted to tell me he had a good voice.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but it wasn't the right way to say it. So I was like, hey, man, kick rocks. But
there is no right way to say that.
yeah.
It's instantly.
Right. You can't just walk up and be like, hey, I have a good voice. Like, this is not maybe the time to do that. But also I had somebody come up.
Well, in that moment, are you like, but how much are you paid to be here and sing?
Yeah, there's a little bit of
how
that.
How good is it?
Right.
Well, and like, because you had to walk up and tell me. Mine's so good that you had to come up and walk up and tell me about yours.
My voice compelled you to tell me about your own.
Yes.
No, but I had also, it's like these little nuggets, I guess, of gig life where somebody came up to me. Abilene's my hometown, obviously, and I've played there a lot. Some gigs, I feel like the last few years I've been doing more shows in Abilene, and it's because I will like
I'll
limit the amount of gigs that I do here, and then whenever I have shows, like the one that you played with me,
it was sold out. Yeah, it was great.
Buy 40 tickets or something like that, which was, I mean, the highlight of probably one of the best nights of my entire life. So cool,
dude.
But I had 2 people come up to me last night and they're like, are you Andrew Holmes? And I was like, what the shit is that?
That's so cool.
And that was so cool.
That's so cool.
And so like even, I mean, playing at a little taco shop here in town, there are some people where they know what you're doing deeper than just, like I'm here playing at a restaurant today.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you, but I experienced that last night too.
Cool,
When I was waiting for the chips and salsa.
You did tell me, actually.
Did I? Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
They recognize you from Callahan.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was like, fuck.
You're like,
but at
that wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They were like, "Are you in a band?" And I was like, I was so proud.
Yeah.
Whenever someone asked me, I was like, "Yes, I am." Like, I knew it. Callahan Divide. I saw you at this barbecue cook-off like 7 years ago, and I was like, "No, that's not me." But
have you? This is kind of one of those weird skills I've noticed that I have in the last 2 years, and let me know if you have this too. But I'm able to like pick out artists just by the way they
I
carry
can smell
themselves.
them. Yeah. No, it's just like, it's like if you, and there's different types of them, but there's some type of common denominator, and a little bit of it is like a walk. Sometimes it's a walk. A lot of it is just like, I shit you not. A lot of it is like, who's the most stylish person in the room?
Part of it is
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who's
that's
the most
true.
and maybe not when you're hanging out with Gage, but Gage is a songwriter and an artist. You know what I mean? He doesn't necessarily know a G chord, but that's only because you hadn't showed it to him. You know what I mean? Like, he is an artist,
Right?
And he is usually the best dressed person in the room. But like, that's a pretty good indicator. When me and my girlfriend Reagan, who's another artist, when we went to Hot Springs for her birthday, just have a little trip.
Yeah.
And dude, when we would walk around, I could literally, I was like, that's a guitar player, that's a musician.
Yeah.
And I walk and like, I'd pretty much quit smoking cigarettes, but that dude looked like a cigarette. I knew he had one, you know.
Right.
So I walked and I was like, "Hey, bro, do you have a cigarette?" And he said, "Yeah, man." And he gave me one. I go, "Are you a musician?" He goes, "What else do you know about me?"
Yeah. Is this your social security number?
Yeah, exactly. Is this your mother's maiden name?
Is this your card? That's funny, man. Yeah, there's this last maybe like year and a half, I've been doing a lot more like audio engineer sound gigs and stuff, just kind of randomly on the side. And I'm noticing that I can show up to a venue and immediately be like, "Hey, you're the one playing tonight, aren't you?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right, cool. Let's see what
Cool,
you
let's
got."
do
And they're
this.
like, "This is probably your drummer, right?" And
Like,
just
yeah.
like, "Yeah, that's him." And this
him.
guy's the. I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Just everyone raise. Yeah.
Yeah.
We already know.
Come with
Let's
me.
go. Yeah. You.
Yeah. Does everybody know how to
Go to the
sound
stage.
check? All right.
Yeah.
You look like you do.
It's kind of a fun game I like play with myself. a
Yeah.
little bit, and I don't know exactly what it is that it might be the
It's like
style
a
thing.
it's
but
like a
there are some
vibe.
people that it's just a vibe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's something about like if you've it's like if you've do you remember the first time you went and played in front of people
Yeah.
and it was like jitters the first few times.
Yeah.
And the first 10 times and then 20 times got a little easier, a little easier, a little easier. And then now I just don't even
Right.
I don't even think about it.
Right.
Maybe if the crowd was like enormous, maybe if I was playing for 10,000
But even then,
people.
you'd probably still be like, "This is what I wanted,"
Yeah.
rather than
It would turn into excitement.
rather than this is overwhelming. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, "This is kind of what I wanted."
I think that just the action of doing that
Mm-hmm.
night after night for 10 years or something
Mm-hmm.
makes you kind of walk in a way that is like
I think that's what it is.
90% of the people that I talk to, I'm not going to worry about what they think about me.
That's so true. And there's but that's not in like a putting out negativity kind
Right,
of way.
sure.
And so like there's a line there, and when you see people walk that line, you're like, they've done what I do.
Yeah. Comedians that bomb a lot will
Mm-hmm.
probably experience the same thing. I mean, bombing as a comedian is way, way worse.
100%.
But there's times I've
But
messed up.
I've bombed lately.
Yeah.
And just because I have songs that I've had for a long time, and I have an instrument to lean on, like that doesn't mean I didn't bomb. I fucking bombed, And it's like,
But that gets easier whenever you've been bombing in front of people.
yeah. Well, and and kind of what you have to learn from comedians too is like when you realize that it's going to be a bomb completely for the rest of the set. It's like kind of enjoy it in a way, because like you can at least like say something funny about it later, and like it also kind of like if you're there for 2 or 3 hours, and in the first 30 minutes you realize like, oh, this is gonna be fucking awful for the whole time.
Right.
You are free to do whatever you want. Now.
Yeah.
You should have shown up with that freedom, but you really didn't because you wanted them to have a good time and you wanted to do your obligations that you agreed to and all this other shit. But when you're halfway through that first set and you know that there's no getting them back, you're free to do anything. And in that journey, you will find something eventually to get somebody back. Sometimes, That's like not a fun game to play.
Yeah, there's a comfortability whenever you hit that kind of rock bottom on stage in front of people. You go, well, here I am. It's nowhere but up from here. So, I think that's probably part of the fact, like one factor of many that helps you like call out songwriters of the same ilk because they walk with that knowledge that like, I don't know, nothing's really that big of a deal ultimately, I feel like. Let's talk about writing stuff.
Yeah. What have you been doing lately?
So I went through, I wonder if you kind of do the same thing. I've noticed that a lot of my songwriting eras are based off of like a different type of tuning or a different set of chords that kind of inspire me for a season. And my last record, that was all like drop D stuff. And it was like a lot of them were similar chords. You already know that because you've played all of them with me. But it's like I'll dive into a set of 3 or 4 chords that I go, these sound really good together and have a certain tonality to them. And then I'll see how different I can make the song sound with the same set of chords.
Wow.
But then
Okay.
they all feel like they go together whenever you place them in an album.
Right. Yeah.
There's like a similar heart vein to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they all come from the same sentiment of a tone or something like that.
Yeah. With make believe.
Yeah.
Everything is either in E or D, and maybe something that would be like a relative key to those things. And yeah, it was basically for that same thing. It's like these are all kind of living in the same world, subject matter wise. So like, let's kind of sonically try to do that. And that's not necessarily, if you're doing that on purpose, that's not necessarily all that hard to do afterwards either. Like if you're starting the songs with those chords maybe, and maybe I would write one in one key and be like, it probably sounds better in this other key. Like, wow, it does sound better in that key. Let's do that, you know. And that doesn't piss off anybody too much as long as they hadn't learned the song already, you know, to change the key like that. But with what I've been doing lately with I went and saw James McMurtry the other day.
Okay.
It was so good. He's one of my favorites.
I think you and I have talked about him, and he's one of those songwriters I need to get educated on.
I wish you could have joined me and T.O.
Where was it?
at Mags.
Oh, yeah.
It was awesome, and it was solo. And he had...
I love that venue. I don't know why. But
we just played there
Are they closing down?
They're just moving locations.
Oh,
that whole
okay.
part of town is like just going to be a huge apartment.
Okay.
And so Graylin, one of the owners, took me to their new location the other day, and it's like way cool. It's cool as fuck, and it's
Good.
like way better parking.
Yeah, the parking was
Bigger.
always
There's gonna be a
bummer.
green room now. They're bringing the OG stage.
Good.
And
That's
they're
cool.
bringing it there, and then they're adding on to it to make it a bigger stage. It's a really cool spot. But I love it. I love where it is now too. And we played there the other day. But anyway, when I saw McMurtry there with T.O., he had one guitar up there. Just I don't know what tuning it was in, but it was in an open tuning, and he would just kind of go back and forth between this 12 string in standard and this 6 string in some weird open tuning. And I love messing with capos, but not necessarily traditionally. I love kind of just messing with them, you know. And he put one like on the second fret, kind of what I did last night. I just kind of turn it upside down, do the drop D, fake out in the key of E, kind of. So he did that, but in the key of F sharp, and so he put a capo on the second fret, and then did the other trick. So he had 2 capos on the same guitar. There's just something so brilliant about that to me, just because like he's making the job easier for himself. He's like, that's what's cool about utilizing a capo like that to me, or tunings and stuff like that. It's like you got to a level of the instrument where you are making the instrument do what you want it to do, rather than you being like, how can I make this David Matthews chord shape work? It's like, you don't have to. Just make the guitar do it. You know what I mean? And like when that thing clicks and you're like, wow, I have all these tools. And it's like, yeah, I'm not saying don't learn the stuff. You have to learn it to know even where to put this shit. But once you've figured out where these things go, yeah, utilize the thing. You know what I'm saying? There's everything on it can change, you know?
Right.
And so I haven't been writing all that much, you know, as much as I often do. Usually, like, as long as you've known me, I write pretty consistently.
More than anybody I know, really.
But since Guy's been born, I've written greatly less. And a lot of that has to do with I have less existential questions that I'm asking myself now. You know, I'm not.
Why do you think that is?
I think I just don't have the capacity to, because I'm thinking about. I think my my obligations are right in front of me now, and I think I think without like that constant, you know, just little face looking, you know what I mean? Like before I had that, my obligations were like kind of I don't want to say imaginary. They're just self-imposed, because I work for myself, and like I have shit that I have to do, but it's like no one's making sure that I'm writing. I'm the only one doing that. No one's making sure that I'm booking shows. I'm really the only one. You know what I mean? And So that relationship with living is different now. You know what I mean? Like, just period. And so I just have I wonder about what's going to happen when I die less, because I'm more present in whatever current moment is happening now. I'm not, I've spent so much of my life in every current present moment also having one foot in the door of writing a song.
Right.
And that isn't truly present. That is how you should be. That is how writers are. And that is being a writer.
Wow,
but that isn't always being truly present. And now I'm a dad before I'm any. I've been a writer before I was anything else for my whole life, and now that's not the case. Now I'm a dad first, and I'm a writer or whatever second, And so I don't know. But anyway, that being said, like that's neither here nor there, good or bad. That's just that's life. That's evolution of perspective changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But so I sit down after the McMurtry show, I'm really inspired with the open tunings and stuff. So I grab a guitar around here and I just put it in like open E or something. And I haven't written something when I did this in like a couple months maybe, which is a long time for me. And as soon as I put it in that open tuning, I found a chord progression on it that was just gorgeous, that I'd never played before or really probably heard before, quote unquote. And a melody came out and subject matter came out. And by the time I was working on like the second half of the second verse, a line came out that was like, wow, I still know how to do this. You know what I mean? Like, because like doing it, making it something that you do every day, and then just kind of setting it down and focusing every bit of your brain power elsewhere for that long of a break. I've never done that, And he's almost 9 months old. I haven't finished a song since he was born. I've finished some songs, but I haven't started and finished really, maybe one or two. That's nothing compared to what I normally would do. But I got to like a line in this new thing that I'm writing now with this open tuning, and I was like, I had the confidence in myself again to be like, okay, it's fine. I have enough songs. I have a shit ton of songs, and there's already enough songs out there. It's like maybe I need to let things fester a little longer, and so I can bring something to the table rather than bringing every current second to the table at every moment. Like maybe like have quite a few moments and let those things fester inside of me, and then once I and jot, just like I'm always jotting things down. If someone says something or I hear something or I think of something that's just like, not to sound arrogant, but if it's simple and prolific, I'm going to write it down. If somebody around me, if I have a thought, what those thoughts feel like, and I would just jot them down. And so when I sit down,
90% of them aren't used, or they're used as tiny little accents to a song or something.
Yeah.
They're never like the subject of the song.
No, but
very rarely.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah.
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Fio Music Group. Fio Music Group is a record label based in Texas that's signed to myself, as well as Dane Pack, Peter Sinclair, and others. They're the reason the lights are on most of the time for all of those households. They've partnered with Yellow Dog Studios so that we're able to have nice things like vinyl records with production value. You can learn more about Fio Music Group by going to the website fiomusicgroup.com.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting to hear that, and I kind of feel that way too. Like the last, COVID may have changed that for a lot of people. Not to bring up the C word, but
Cut.
Right, that one. I think that a lot of priority shifted for a lot of people in that area, and like in songwriters, and I've kind of noticed this with other songwriters I listen to talk about the process of writing too. But as I'm piecing it together, and the way that you said that was brilliant. Like your early writing style was to be not present to some degree. And that, I think, is a euphoric zone for all songwriters.
Yes.
And it is the starting place for good songwriting, where you're present but not really.
Any writing, maybe.
You're observing constantly. Yes. And the personality part of you is kind of an autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
But really what you're doing is you're scanning and you're listening for the right kind of phrases. It's like you're always tuning a radio until you're, what was that noise?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's like you're always looking. The window may be open, but you're inside the house. You're looking outside.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like I have a son. I have to go up to the
Right.
yard now.
yeah, and
You know
I
what I mean?
think for me, my priorities are different, and
Sure.
and because I don't have a kid right now,
Right.
and I think that does it changes your perspective, but that doesn't mean that it's like if you think about the evolution of songwriting, it may start off with this euphoric kind of almost utopian version of songwriting, and it's this era of just picking flowers out of
Right.
the air, you know,
Right.
constantly.
Which is
But
fun.
It's beautiful, but then
But that's not all of it.
right, and you have to evolve personally. You have to have a kid. You have to
Right.
take on new responsibilities, or you have sustained adolescence, and you can't do that. You know.
Yeah,
And
that Peter Pan thing that we hear about, you
Yeah.
know, with Peterson or just whoever. And it's like that bleeds into, if that's just who you are, that just bleeds into what you make, you know, and like,
Well, let me finish this thought.
Sorry, man, yeah.
You're good. You're good. But I think that there's a nugget here where you think about like maybe during that time unconsciously you're building the rules and the framework of how to write a song, and they come naturally to you. But then you have responsibilities, and that takes your focus, and you have that break in that constant connection to the ether, and then you have to consciously tell yourself, as you discover again, you find that line like you did the other day. Oh, this is a rule. I didn't know that I was a rule I was following, but it is a rule, and I remember it. And so you're slowly picking up the pieces again. And then I think at this point that you and I are in right now, where there's priority shifting, and we're coming out of that euphoric, almost childlike wonder phase of songwriting into a more profound version of songwriting, I think you have to rediscover the rules and when to break them. And at the same time, you have to show up to writing as though it's a job.
yeah.
You have to show up in the morning and go like, or like after a long day of work or something like that. Like I build vans and stuff like that. And when I'm sweating all day and then I come home and I'm exhausted, I still go, I have to put in time with this.
Yeah.
And so because it becomes not an obligation, but more like a meditative practice. Like it's not always easy to get up and meditate,
Right.
but it's important to do it. And it's the same thing for songwriting. It's about showing up. And maybe you're carving away at the rules now is where you used to be carving away at concepts. And
Right.
you had these esoteric concepts, but now you've got rules.
Right.
And so you've studied the concepts for a long time, and now you're gaining the rule set to be able to merge those two worlds, and it becomes something that you have to show up for as opposed to something you live in all the time.
Right.
So maybe it's just a natural phase of evolution in the process of songwriting.
I think so, and just starting young and just continuing to do it as you age. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's like I do remember almost like knowing that that's what I was doing when I was younger. Like I knew that I was just like figuring out the rules, and I was just like carving away at concepts because I didn't have my own thing to say. I didn't have my own like real opinions on anything or my own stories to tell. And so I would think of concepts of stories, or I would, write about someone else's story. But now it's like it's like you said, it's like I've phased out of even that being a part of it. That doing that for a long time is like giving me tools, to now kind of sculpt. Now to like give my life a premise rather than taking someone else's story and it's like, okay, that's the concept. It's like, no, the concept is just like, what is my current truth in the key of E? What is my current truth? And like that is the and like the concept rules and tools that like give yourself, like just from doing it long enough, like allows you to get to the second chorus and to the bridge, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't even have to think about building this. It just kind of I just allowed myself to be in that meditative space and showed up and was present as the writer. And but because of the time I've put in prior, I didn't really have to think like, well, where's it going to go now? It was just kind of like, it's like you and it like, now it's like, sometimes it feels like, this may sound kind of heady, but like sometimes it's like, if you get deep enough in the song and you don't know where to go, it's kind of it's like, well, it's kind of like the song's fault. You know, it's like, it's not me. Like we're doing this together. You know, it's like, it's me you know, when you're, I don't know, when that age old question and you're not quite done with one and you're just like, does it need a bridge? You know, it's just like, probably, you know, but maybe not, you know?
Yeah, that's wild, man. There's so many songs I've started lately that I think, you know, chipping away at concepts at the beginning of being a songwriter is because exactly what you said. You don't really want to focus on you don't really have enough stories to tell. Mm-hmm. And so you go, well, what's common? Death, love.
Yep.
You know, spirituality, whatever.
Yep.
And that, when I think back, as you were saying that, I was thinking like, my first 2 records were just about death, love, spirituality, you know, anger, you know, politics, such general categories. And I think a lot of good came from them. But now I'm like, yeah, I've, you know, milked that dry.
Yeah.
And so
that's fair. But you've also
now I've got to focus on what's right in front of me. Mm-hmm. You know, what is in my life, what is so personal that it's also universal.
Right. Like that small scope of it all can get to that broader stroke that you were getting in maybe the first record or whatever that you're talking about. Like, I did that same thing, you know, it's like.
And that's a good place to be because it's not, there's less self-reflection in it, I think. There's some amount of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's not about you, it's about concepts. And so you can be angry at the concepts, or you can fall in love with the idea of love, or you can fall, you know, into, like for me, I did a lot of spiritual songs in the beginning. And I look back on those with like, they're lined with a lot of hubris, I think. You know, me thinking I was more esoterically inclined at the time because I was dealing with concepts as opposed to my personal relationship with spirituality.
Do you think, how much of that do you think is like what we're saying about not having something to say yet, and how much of it is us not wanting to say it?
I think it's a little bit. I think I was eager to say anything at that point.
So as soon as you had something to say, you probably did?
I probably would have. I think that it was easier for me to critique the system instead of myself, maybe. Mm-hmm. And so the system of love. I can comment on that. The system of politics, I can comment on.
And we're just byproducts of these systems.
Right. But I
get that vibe in your early stuff, yeah.
Yeah, now I'm like,
a little more ownership.
Now I'm like, yeah, but what about me?
Yeah.
You know, who am I in the realm of love? Like, I've been the only songs, I started dating a girl pretty seriously. You know about it. Mm-hmm. And it's like the first time, I think, well, my early love songs, when I had not felt like, oh, I'm in love or whatever, were beautiful because they're the system of love.
Right.
And they're not personal.
Right.
But I was writing rules for love and like commenting on the system of love. And System of Love, new band name. But
hell yeah, that's our 3-piece gauge.
But now that it's like, it's something that's, I've sent you several songs, you know, like of newer love songs, and they're extremely personal. Mm-hmm. Like the creaking of the floor at the house that I live at with Allie, and you know, just like that kind of stuff. That's like
it's
so much more personal.
It's the best imagery too that I've seen from you, and I think it's just because it's like when you're talking about someone. So I don't really know her, you know, but it's like because I don't know her. And because of the choices you make, I can put in my love. Yeah. You know, and because it's like,
good, man. I'm
that's coming. You know, it's like, Yeah, I think I want to get I want to get closer. Like you said, like I don't want to get any closer, but I want the words to like, I feel like the only thing that could, the only step further than like what the last two that you sent me is like X-ray vision. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's like it's very in there.
Yeah.
And it's very cool because me and Hayden were talking about some of your songs and how the scope of some of them can be like pretty grand, and that takes like a step. You have to step away to get that, and I like that too. You do that really well. But I really like these last like one or two that you sent me.
Wow.
Were like very, very close.
Man, I appreciate you saying that because that's been kind of maybe a self-critique of mine for a long time, is that I don't know if this is a word, esotericize things so much.
Yeah.
Where it's like I can get real wordy because I'm trying to describe the entire world in 3 minutes.
Right.
And that I think I've done a good enough job at condensing large concepts that people get the gist of what I'm saying, and there's enough room for wonder that the person can listen and apply their own life to the topic of fear, like fear makes the wolf look bigger, or battle and bruise, anxiety, and stuff like that. So I'd take these concepts or human emotions and I'd try to just and I think that I've done well at that for a long time, but I also think that if when I think about how my music is perceived to a listener, I think you kind of got to mentally prepare for it before you turn it on. Yeah. Because you'd have to be in the realm of, I want to think deeply about large concepts.
Did you mean to do that, or did you listen to it back and you're like, fuck, this isn't for everybody?
I think I just...
Or are you just okay because you don't listen to music that's for everybody anyway?
Yeah, I know that as the consumer side of me does. I like that. I like listening to, and I like listening to stuff over and over. And then on my 100th listen, I go, "Oh shit!
Yeah, exactly.
This is about that. I had no idea."
And
but it's catchy enough for me to come back to it over and over. And
your last record has that with the song writing and with the just sonic space.
That I think was the goal. I'm glad to hear that comes across. But it is different now. Maybe I'm stepping into, because this has been a totally different writing season for me too. You and I have talked about how it's, I guess, been a slower writing season, but the songs that have come out of it have been I've never felt conflicted about releasing a song because it was too vulnerable.
Okay. Until
these last few. But it's because that I'm no longer critiquing concepts. This is my, it's like I'm going, hey, listener, here, this is my house. This is my true thoughts on an individual. This is, this is what the cicadas sound like behind our home.
Yeah.
It's like I'm showing them the garden. I'm showing them
Yeah.
And that is vulnerable, man. That's really close to the chest.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot easier to be vulnerable in the esoteric sense or in the conceptual sense. And these next set of songs, I feel like for me have been, it's a good step, but it's different. It's like I've been learning how to analyze and how to condense, but I've been focusing on stuff that wasn't me. And so now I'm like, well, shit, who the fuck am I?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Are they funner to write or are they harder to write?
I feel like they flow easier, which almost makes me want to criticize them more because I'm like, this shouldn't be
this easy.
It shouldn't be this easy.
It should, though, really.
Comparing, but it should.
Honestly, comparing the two types of writing that you're talking about, it should feel easier if you've done that other one for so long. Because that's like a heady, wordy vocabulary game, and right now it sounds like you're just playing the emotional game. That should be an easier, you know what I mean? I think.
I think it is easier, but it also
and not to be. I know what you mean though about something coming out kind of fast. You're like, I should probably look at that, but I don't know. Maybe trust it.
Yeah, I think that maybe my biggest lesson in this category of like quick songwriting is the song Boomerang that's on my last record.
Yeah.
I almost didn't add it
I'm so glad
for
you
the
did.
sole reason that I wrote it in 10 minutes.
That hurts me. It took you
But
that
no
long?
other song is that.
Took you that long?
There's no other song like that on that record.
Not
that
really,
Just
no.
like, I think I was watching the show Money Heist on, or maybe it's just Heist
Okay.
on Netflix, and it's like a foreign. It's originally a foreign show. He's snoring. It's originally a foreign show, and they dubbed over with English or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the characters, one of the main love interests, it's like in one of the later seasons, just says something as simple as, I was like drinking whiskey alone in my room, like just noodling the guitar, but not trying to songwrite,
Right.
but just looking at, like watching it on my computer or something like that. And they said, like, I guess the rough translation from, Spanish to English or whatever was like, our love is like a boomerang or something. And I just paused it, and I was like, okay. And the song, as you know, is 2 chords the whole way through, and it feels like it's back and forth,
Yeah,
and that's
bro.
kind of the vibe for
Oh
it.
my gosh.
But it literally was just, she said one thing, and I was like, maybe it's the good, and just right straight into it.
Oh.
And it, like, literally wrote
That
it
first
while
line,
it was paused.
maybe
the
it's
screen
the
didn't even
what?
dim the curve that I'm on.
Oh, honey.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the curve that I'm on, honey. That's the
Yeah.
first line.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I just went with that because I knew I was getting to Boomerang.
Right.
The concept was Boomerang.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, Boomerang and love. So easy. I'm just talking to a lover. Maybe it's the curve that I'm on, But anyways, the screen didn't even dim before I was done with that song.
Wow.
And I feel like I just shit it out of my ass.
Before you say
It worked,
before you say come back together, what do you say? I've been on the run.
I've been on the run from you. God, now I can't.
No,
do it in my
yeah.
head.
I've been on the run from your love. I've been on the run from your love, hoping it would come back together.
Oh, yeah,
Boomerang.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then like, oh fuck. And it's just 2 chords just boomeranging back and forth. I was like, oh my God. It's so good.
Thanks, man. But that's such a simple concept, and
is.
that's what was so difficult for me to accept about the song, is that it's not about like love in general,
Right.
and it's not about like the opening the door to the chasm of your heart or something like. It's just, and we're kind of back and forth sometimes.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing, and I was like, I can write about that, and not just it's nothing. You know what I mean? And it's not because I'm amazing or whatever. It's because I. Going back to I've been practicing writing with big concepts.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
smaller concepts, I'm like, yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that's the favorite for almost everybody.
Well,
It's my
it's-
parents' favorite. It's my girlfriend's favorite. It's people who come up to me who have heard anything about my music go, oh, Boomerang. Yeah, you're the guy that did. And I'm like, I almost didn't have
It's
that.
the hook.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you like. It's the fact that you say like a definition, and then you say boomerang,
Yeah.
like a soft definition, I guess.
Right.
It's the fact like the whole first verse is like, I don't know, the melody's so good, but it's just like it sets it up for it. Just I don't know, like it's the hook, man. That's why everybody wants you to
simple,
play
man.
that motherfucker, man. It's because like it's the perfect hook.
Well, I appreciate that. It's.
You can't plan a good hook.
I know, that's what's so frustrating is that like I've put so much freaking effort into some of the choruses that I have.
Yeah.
And then that one is one word.
Yes, dude.
Boomerang.
And that's why it works
Boomerang.
so good.
I'm like,
And in the context of your music, that's why that one pokes out to these people that are
Probably
listening to
so.
FM radio all the
Right.
time. That you said that's the one that's more. It's different, more different than any other ones on your
Right.
on your latest album.
yeah. Do you have any songs that you like almost didn't add? And then, well, I like, what is that song by John Mayer? I guess what I'm trying to get at is Waiting on the World to Change.
Uh-huh.
Interviews I've seen with him where he's like, that was a throwaway song.
Yeah.
And now he's like, I'm tired of playing it at places. Obviously we're not at that level where
Right.
people are like, please play this. But are there that concept of writing something and being like, this probably won't work, and then that being the song that people latch onto? That's happened to me twice with the last two records. Like the first one in Through the Hollows was Buried 'Em Shallow.
Yeah.
It's never been my favorite song, and I added it because it was my dad's favorite song, and now everyone's like, oh, the murder ballad. I'm like,
And you're the murder ballad guy at the
There it
taco
is.
shop now.
that's me.
Yeah. When I first started making solo records, when I was making Break the Levee, there were supposed to be 10 tracks, and there's one that never got mixed or mastered just because I was like, at the same time of thinking this is too vulnerable, it was also too vague. I didn't want to ask any questions about it, so we didn't record it. But what you're asking is like, on that album there is a song called "To Point a Finger," and it was really fun to record it, and it was the only one that I wrote there with the producer Casey Diorio. And so like that whole thing, it was just fun to do that, kind of make something out of nothing with him because we're already kind of in this headspace before. Yeah,
That's great.
And it was like I was on an electric and he was on an organ, and so it was, I hadn't really written a song without just an acoustic or a piano before, especially in a space like that. And so I was like, it was a vibe, and like I remember just being like, oh, I have to pee really bad. I remember like while I'm peeing, I think of the first line, and so like I'm like, hold on, like and I just remember that being really fun. And I like listening to that song maybe, but I don't love playing it for a couple different reasons. I don't resonate, and I can play songs that I don't resonate with how I feel. Like if I have a song that's like, this is how I feel, and then like 5 years later I don't feel that way anymore, I'll still play it but like that is one thing about this song that I don't necessarily resonate with the message of it anymore. But it's also just hard to sing, It's like it's got a bunch of falsetto stuff in it, and it's like you have to catch me on the right night to even be able to hit that stuff,
Yeah.
Maybe now because I haven't been smoking as much, but like, earlier, like on tour this year,
Hey,
earlier
if
it
you
was
can't
like,
hit the high notes, I'll hit them.
yeah, dude, this is my, you know what I'm saying? I needed that dude at your show last night to come on the road with me. But it's like, yeah, if you're seeing me, this is my 4th show this week. Like, I'm not playing that fucking song.
Yeah.
I can't sing it.
Yeah.
But it's like, anyway, that was one that that's probably the only one I could think of that we'll get towards the end of a set, and I'll kind of be like, well, did anyone like show up wanting to hear something that I haven't done yet? And that's usually the one. And sometimes if
a fucking
and
course off mic.
yeah, like fuck these guys.
God.
Not you.
Yeah.
Anyone but you.
Yeah.
That I wrote that song's kind of about I'm still a proud member of Callahan Divide, but I wasn't when I wrote that song, anymore, that we weren't playing together anymore. And I felt like I was wearing a lot of why that band wasn't a band anymore. I felt like that was a lot like on me, and I was like, and when I told them that, I was like, I'm gonna go start making my own records and stuff. They were like, okay, cool, man. Like we love you. We're gonna keep. They were already a band for 2 albums before I even joined, so like we're gonna keep going. I was like, good. And then they went out, and then they were like, this isn't the same thing. And like I love them and respect them for that, and I'm glad that we can play together again, make records and stuff together again. But at the time, I was like, that's not my fault, like that they're not playing together anymore. Like I have things that I'm trying to do and say, and the things that I'm writing. The direction musically that Callahan Divide was going, as kick-ass as it was, and I love it as a listener, I wasn't making stuff like that. I was making very small vignettes of things, like very just like I was just like acoustic guitar and narrative. Like that's where my mind was, and creatively that's what I was making every time. When we would get together to do a new Callahan Divide EP or Callahan Divide album, it turned as cool as it was to jam and make, like it was getting further and further away from like what I was like making personally. And I was like, I got to the point where I wasn't a kid anymore. I was in my 20s, and I'd been doing this for a little while, and I felt like I was good enough to start making decisions rather than having like a fourth of a decision.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to something that I was making.
Did you release something under Garrett Bryan and then transition to the Traveling City Committee?
Yeah. Yeah, Break the Levee is just under
That's
my
what
name.
I was thinking. What was the
Take Shape was the first TCC record.
what was the reason behind moving into Garrett Bryan and the something different? Are they different kind of projects, or is it
Yeah, in a way,
an
yeah.
evolution of Garrett Bryan to some degree?
So both,
Okay.
but now that there are two separate entities, now if I want to do like a country album and I want to put my fucking comedy songs on there or something, that's something I don't have to pollute the Traveling City Committee world with.
Gotcha.
I have this on, and everything is coming from the same places as far as the website and.
I'm just looking forward to that comedy album.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to doing it too. But like that, but as far as branding is considered, that doesn't make the most sense to associate.
That makes sense.
This Traveling City Committee thing is like we're trying to be as innovative as possible with like this with the soundscape that we're given, and so we're trying to like utilize. Not that this is what any real band's doing in the studio, but we're just trying to record the newest sounds through the oldest gear to get the coolest sound. You know what I mean? And like that's what TCC is like all about. It's like taking the but I write a lot of those songs and I write a lot of just country songs, and some of my country songs are funny. And so I'll just utilize having that separate entity on something like Spotify or whatever, because it's already set up to be separate. But yeah, it was just like, to answer your question, it's just both. It was an evolution of me as an artist and the team around me, And it's like me and Gage have been working together since before Break the Levee came out. But I didn't have a real band. Like by that time, maybe Taylor was playing drums with us. Maybe JT was playing guitar. But they were learning songs from studio players, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then from after that year, it was like I'm bringing my songs to my band now, which by that time had grown to be the band that I have, the Traveling City Committee.
How many songs have you written in studio with a band? Is it typically you bring them to the group? Because I've started to get into band stuff. I mean, obviously, you were a part of that whenever I did it with the last record, Garden. But
who are you playing with determines which one you should do.
Okay.
I think.
Did you start with friends and then build something with them, or was it like? Oh,
I started with friends,
musicians.
but my friends happened to be the best at what they like.
Okay, so best of both worlds.
They were my friends, but they were my friends that did what they do better than I know anyone else. What Gage does. Gage is one of my best friends, but he also is just the best at what he does that I even know.
Oh yeah, Gage.
And so I think that same way with Jordan Tyler Haynes and Ivy. And so if I'm bringing a song as songwriter, as performers and singers and such, but like as writers, I respect them just as much, And so I can maybe trust bringing an unfinished song to the studio and like think that I can really get some help with actually finishing it, because these two people will like diligently sit down and like understand. I don't have to fucking explain anything. Mm-hmm. They're like, we need to get this song finished. And we can do that. But I will say, more often than not, the best bang for the buck is like, you don't have to walk in there with anything necessarily like, as far as like composition is concerned. You don't need to walk in there with anything necessarily too close to your chest. But if you can give them basically the formation of it all, this is the verse, this is the chorus, we're going to do another verse, we're going to do another chorus, and then after that we're going to do this. If you can walk in there with that already, they're going to be able to help you. More so, like if you can already have that done, there'll be more help for you on these other fronts. Rather than because it's like you'll be hung up because you'll be still in word land when they're ready for like drum tones. And
shit. I think that's been kind of my experience with it, or like my thought process as I move forward into this. We have our first like band practice in a long time. On September 9th, and we're going to get together, and I'm going to introduce like 3 or 4 new songs to them that are like probably 80% done, and I have a feeling that a lot of the melodic, like the musical aspect of it, is going to fill in some of the parts that are wanting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I wondered about that lyrically, because for me, I'm a huge stickler when it comes to words.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to deal with hurting people's feelings by going.
Then
That
I would
doesn't communicate.
Then I would
what I
finish
want.
the words before you bring
Yeah.
it to them. Now, maybe if you, I will say,
There's probably only 2 or 3 people, you included, that I wouldn't mind bringing a song to. In fact, there are 1 or 2 that I've been going, I'd really like to write this with you. So we should do that. But outside of that very small group of people, I'm like, if you don't get it on the same type of,
right.
with the same level of seriousness, like throwing the word "and" in there.
Well, hey, that's a big deal,
dude. That can change
everything.
So
if you would have went, hoping we could come back together. And Boomerang,
Yeah.
are you fucking kidding me? That song's terrible now.
Song.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, thank you. See, you get it. This
Of course
is the
I
point.
do.
Yeah, and I love Allie. She's great, my girlfriend. But she sometimes she'll be like, hey, why don't you throw this in there? And I'm like,
because it doesn't.
well, because the inflection's not right. It doesn't sit well with this first verse that already kind of touches on that. If I were to say with as opposed to in, it's a different, with is congruatory, it's like there's Congress involved in it, and in is
so true.
it's something totally different, you know? And it's like the micro meanings behind
every
article
word.
words.
Yeah. But
that makes a difference.
They make a huge difference, and they when you're say like the concept.
And I don't know why.
You know. It's different in every song is why.
Yeah.
Say like with Boomerang, okay, Boomerang is the title, the hook, the summary of everything.
Right.
And so if any verbiage that you're using can utilize something like going back and forth.
Right.
That's what you or here and there or whatever. It's like just because that. And that changes with each song. That's just for that song. Like I have a song called Papier Mâché, which I say paper mache. But but the hook is like goodbye waves and paper mache don't make it easy to be, and like in the song it talks about waves, like talking about waving and stuff. But it talks about what am I trying to say? It talks about it uses imagery words as verbs,
waves has a dual connotation.
Waves. Anchor.
Yeah.
Just wait, I don't need you as an anchor. Just wave to me from the shore.
Right.
That's a line in the song. It's like, okay,
Brilliant.
just using the vocabulary that is associated with the fucking shit that we're looking at. That, you know what I'm saying? And that's why Boomerang works. And and that's why that thing, you know what I'm saying? That's why that changes in every song.
Yeah,
and
duality.
So that's why you can trust me and the 2 other people that you're singing this to, because they're looking at it and they're going, okay, Boomerang. What does a boomerang do?
Right.
Not what does a boomerang look like. Mm-hmm. That's stupid.
It's a big L.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point to summate the bringing it to the band question. It's probably different with every band. If you were in my band
if
all
I
the
was
time,
if I was in your band all the time, we would still do that like this
separately.
We would still do that like
bring
this
it to
and then bring it to them.
Yeah. I think that's the way to do
100%.
it. Yeah, but it does. I think that the next set of songs that I'm moving into, because they're a lot more personal, I wonder if it's because I kind of want, maybe it's like a self-protection thing. I want to distract from how personal something is by give me a little bit more drums. Give me
that doesn't do that though.
You know,
that doesn't really do that.
I think it can sometimes.
Keep hitting this fucking mic.
What is that song you sing?
I think it does it for me. I think I feel like it does that.
Yeah.
I think if the listener is listening, they're listening. And you know what I'm saying?
But it may distract them for the first 10 times.
That's fair.
And then they come back after they're like, oh, I like the vibe of this.
That's
fair.
fair.
Then those concepts ring a little bit more true.
But you want them to listen to it at least that many times anyway. And so ideally, your listeners are learning you.
Yeah, that's true. I guess there's no escaping that. And that's that's a good thing, you know.
I will say though.
What's the title of that song
Which
of yours
one?
that I fucking adore? Building you a castle only for the God.
First day in a new
damn
place.
it, dude. The wow.
Did we write that together?
The-
Did you? No, did I do that one by myself?
Oh man, that song is so personal.
Yes.
The pile of laundry,
100%.
The bed sheets, and
The shampoo in the bathroom.
I don't belong on that side of the bed, and the shampoo.
Right,
in the
which is a
bathroom.
total cliche, but like if you got to use your cliches,
Right,
you know,
because they're real. There's a reason behind
That
things
whole-
being
yeah.
cliches because they're universal.
they
So
are
if you can find a new way to say a cliche,
all through make believe. They're just age old cliches just sprinkled through.
yeah,
And in that song, there's a few in that song, but definitely I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but the whole like that side of the bed is like I can't sleep over. That's you know what I'm saying?
yeah. I'm trying to remember it because it's brilliantly worded. It's not the side I belong to.
Hanging
or
on
something.
and hoping by a thread,
Hanging on and hoping by a thread.
making it and knowing I could use another bed.
Yeah.
I'm not the one that side belongs
Not
to.
the one that side
reminds
belongs
me
to.
of you.
It reminds me of you. Damn, that one's so good.
Thanks.
But to use that song as an example for what I'm saying, which is that song, I don't know who this is about.
Right.
But I've got someone that's about.
It's
for me.
and it's about that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's who it's about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's who it's about.
That's who it's about. Yeah, it's
Yes.
the right answer.
That is the right answer.
The first time I listened to it was in a batch of 5 times of me listening to it back to back to back to back. But like it was tears and chills.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's because I'm, I think a lot of songwriters, and maybe this is the way that consumers listen to this kind of music. I don't know, but I'm clearly focused on the lyrical side of stuff, and I know you.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I
that's
just
part of
handed
it.
it to you, and I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
"Go listen
Check
to
this shit
Check it out."
but I think the thing that like the consumer side of me that listened to it, hand in hand with the lyrical side of me, really connected with the guitar.
Yeah.
Like, kind of John Mayer-esque in the start there, that little lick.
Yeah.
And I think that if I wasn't somebody who practiced words, words on the paper, I'm still working on audible words.
Sure. Yeah. You're doing just fine.
Thank you, man. If I wasn't someone who practiced that, my first thoughts about that song would be the sentiment of the tonality, like the sentiment of the music behind it.
Yeah.
But if I were to stick around long enough and listen to it, I'd realize that it's an intricate threading of words. Like the way I texted you about what was it? It was like you used the analogy hanging on by a thread for a verse about making
Sheets.
beds
Yes.
and sheets.
Yes.
And
That's
so-
the same thing we were just talking
right.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I listen to that song over and over, I think I hear the duality of words that you use constantly. These metaphors that we all know and like turns of phrases that we say all the time.
Right.
But you expand on them to the concept of the entire verse. And the listener is probably just gonna be like, oh, I know hanging on by a thread.
Yes.
Oh, and this is also about a bed.
Yes.
And it's 2 separate thoughts.
Yes.
But 30
And they're
times in, they
incorrect.
listen, they might, they're not right.
And they're incorrect.
They'll learn. But 30 times in, they might make that connection and go, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And like recognize the amount of thought that goes into
Yeah.
how deeply personal some of those cliches are.
Yes.
And how personal the imagery of, making your bed and needing a new one.
Well, and I think if you're ground, it's like okay, the cliche ass metaphors coming up. It's like if you can kind of ground that, you know what I mean? Like before I kind of laid the vocabulary down with the thread kind of first before we even got to the cliche.
Yeah.
And so like it's really subliminal, but it's like it's less it's less hacky in a way. It's like
Yeah.
it's less like, wow, there's that cliche, because
Right.
I'd already kind of like built a ramp to it, you know.
Yeah, a ramp and a soft landing. You
Yeah.
covered it on both sides. It's like it's
Because
interesting.
the hook is the landing.
Yeah.
It lands back around to where you already know the hook's gonna be, kind of.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting how much you do have to hide cliches,
Yeah.
and people don't. I think that I don't know. It's a good thing that they don't. It's a good thing that people who are more consumer based they're not listening for those turns of phrases,
Right.
but they work on them.
Yes.
You know, it works on them over and over, and that's why metaphorically, like JBP says this all the time, where metaphorical truths are much deeper than historical truths, and it's like that's why you can write a song when you're 17 that breaks you down again when you're 27,
Right.
because if you space the cliches properly, and you set them up and knock them down the right way, they're open-ended
Yeah.
truths.
Yeah.
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Andor Peppers. Andor Peppers is family owned and operated. They have small batch fermented hot sauces and smoked spice mixes from garden to bottle to table. They have physical locations in West Virginia and Florida. If you can't find them there, if you're not around, you can go to andorpeppers.com. Thank you, Andor Peppers.
Me and Hayden were talking about that for your songs last night too.
Hayden is gonna cut a song or two of mine that's really old that I never thought would ever see the light of day, and I'd kind of forgot about him.
Yeah. I'm serious about you covering.
I really want to do that for
Super
sure.
cool.
I showed him that EP
Oh,
on the
good.
way here, and he the only thing he said about it was, "I just wish it was longer." I go, "Me too." He goes, "I can't believe that was done here." I was like, "Dude, that was one of the first few projects that was done up there."
I really like that record a lot.
I love it.
Yeah.
Will and Wonder by Kaiser.
Kaiser, yeah, that's a fun one to make. I think it was also fun because the Fox brothers had like just bought the studio.
It was it was probably like the third or fourth project that came out of there, but it was like the first one that was like truly beautiful. Like really, it sounded really good, like so good. And last night was the first time I'd probably listened to it in a year, and yeah, it's so good every time.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, that one's one that I do wish more people knew about, but I'm not really ever going to promote it.
That's fair.
Yeah,
It is gorgeous. Is it just you and her and Danny?
pretty much.
Who
Yeah,
played the drum stuff on it? Small. There's not much. There's like a snare on one track.
I think maybe Travis did.
Thought so.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's the case. We did it so that it would be super minimal. I
Yeah.
wanted it to sound like a campfire EP,
And
and I think that it holds up to that. And I probably listen to it once a year, and when I go back and listen to it, I'm like, man,
this was really good.
it's pretty solid through
It's
and through.
really
And if it
good.
leaves you wanting more, then that's how it should be.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Have you ever written an EP? Let me be more precise with what
Okay.
I'm about to ask you.
Okay.
Have you ever done like a conceptual EP? Like where you go, I want this song to have, or this set of 4 or 5 songs to be about one subject or have a certain subset of imagery to it, and then that's how you write those songs.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Not really. But I have done that conceptual idea with the last 2 albums I made.
Yeah.
But not in the beginning of the writing process, no. And they were not EPs, they were LPs. But what I did was, okay, so here's my big batch of songs. Okay. Which one of these even go on an album together? You know, and which of, like genre-wise, like which of them just don't even belong in the same thing? And so separate them like that. And whatever list is longer, it's like, okay, that's the album. And you look at that and it's like, okay, what do these have in common?
Yeah.
And whatever that is, once I find whatever that common denominator is,
Yeah, the through line.
you can kind of it'll tell you what chronologically happens first, second, third, fourth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I know what you're saying because you and I did that with my record.
That's right. Yeah.
Like you named Garden.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we did it together.
We did
but
it
I showed
together.
you how I did it.
I guess I named Garden
I think so.
years ago
Yes.
and didn't know about
I
it
think
until
that-
you were like, this is the name of the record.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
And you're like, wow, yeah, it is. And I
Yeah,
was like,
thanks for reminding me
Yeah, exactly.
that I named it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I kind of still do that, you know, and that's why I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to doing that country comedy thing, just because that list keeps growing, and because I keep making these other records.
So you're writing technically for like 4 or 5 projects. You just don't know where they're going to go yet. You just kind of
That's fair. I'm just writing, and I confidently know that because I'm involved in so many different projects, and because I'm always constantly recording stuff, I just know that if it's worth keeping, I can use it eventually.
Right.
And so we just got the vinyls back from Make Believe. We're already sitting on the masters of our next album. You know what I mean?
It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, and so it's like I already have the country comedy album written. I already have the next TCC thing pretty much half written, and so it's like, yeah, I'm not in a hurry to like get something out. I have enough shit written down already that I can utilize wherever, and so it's like I do feel the freedom to like. I guess that's maybe why I'm not sitting down and being like, the next 5 songs I write need to be this concept, because it's like it's all coming from one place, and so regardless of it sounds like country or sounds like this or sounds like, the thing is like I may write 3 songs about the same thing, but this song can go on a Callahan record, and this song can go on a country comedy thing for my own sake. It's self-indulgent, really, and maybe this one can go on the TCC record, and they're all maybe conceptually about the same thing, but the concept is just my current truth, you know. But the sound of it is maybe my current truth. Maybe today I'm eating gravy and cracking jokes, so that my current truth is going to come out country and funny. But maybe on this day I had to drop my son off. I'm not going to see him for a couple of days. Maybe in that vein of whatever that emotional thing, it is my current truth, whatever that current truth is, but it's coming through this vein of this other thing. And like musically, it just reflects that, you know. And like, yeah, I don't feel too bound to be like this, and this. I just let it be. And if it's like hip, we'll do it in the band. And if it's like funny and country, I'll save it for my thing. And if it's kind of anthem-esque, I'll show it to the Callahan guys. And those are kind of the 3 lanes that I'm kind of just always in.
Interesting. How does it feel to I've never had an album already written and ready to go by the time that I release an album as a predecessor to that album. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that I would run into the issue of getting bored with those songs way before I ever even release them. And I want to have the excitement that pushes me to release them and to tour on them and to promote them constantly. Mm-hmm. So what has been your experience? Because this is maybe the 2nd or 3rd time that you've done that, right? Where you have an album written and release the album before it and then start working on that album. Or no, you already have it, like the masters of it.
Right. I don't have the masters yet, but I do have final mixes.
Yeah, it's like set.
Yeah, it's done.
How do you not get like...
So I don't... Now it's easier now because now I have a big enough discography to go out and gig with the band or even solo, and I don't have to... I can fill whatever time slot. You know, usually it's 90, usually it's 2 hours, but even the 3-hour stuff, gigs, I can go out and play and never play an unreleased song now.
Yeah.
And so to keep that excitement of it all and to keep that whole thing separate, it's like we went and recorded this album, and then we fucking we haven't even jammed those songs together. And so
that's
and
cool.
so when it's time to it's done and you know, and we made all the parts, but when it's time to like start releasing that thing and start gearing up for that tour or whatever, we'll all relearn our parts and we'll all come together and rehearse these new songs. And so now like they feel new again to us because we haven't touched them at all. We've listened to them for mixing notes and we like them, so we jam them if we want, but we're not like when we go make it, and we're not, if we're far enough ahead like that, we can go make it, and by the time we have to relearn it, it feels like something completely new again.
Interesting. That's a great thought on it, because for me I guess it's also like maybe the difference of you've got a full team and have for a while, and I think I plan to do that at some point.
Yeah.
But you're pushing a band thing
Right.
more consistently.
Right. Well, and everyone's involved, not just on the musical level of it all. It's like we are a band, but like we as a friend group have evolved past just being a band. We're like a multimedia art company. It's not just for me. It's for any artist that needs help doing what we do. You know what I'm saying? It's for a fee, and everyone's fees are separate. Everyone is just freelance individuals, but it's like, it's not, we're more than just a band for ourselves, but we're more than just playing musicians for a band for other people too. If a lot of folks that are coming in to Clyde or maybe even to Yellow Dog in Wimberley to record, and they're just solo acts, and they use us to track all the stuff, they'll end up using us to go play a few gigs, and they're like, well, I mean, y'all know like, yeah, fuck, you got a gig, we'll go do the gig, and so it's like the Traveling City Committee is just, this catch-all for the behind-the-scenes things that maybe Gage could help with showing a songwriter about royalties, or very necessary things that maybe someone that has just been doing it maybe not all that long just wouldn't necessarily know, that are just kind of day-to-day stuff for us to just do. We're here to help other artists like do that, as not a company sounds weird, and I'm saying, like, everybody that's involved is kind of like fuck establishments anyway, but it's like, if you come, we can do it for you, whatever we're doing. And it doesn't, like, everyone in my band has their own individual projects too, and none of them sound the same. And so it's like, don't think that you come here and everyone in my band that works on your stuff and I produce don't think it's going to sound like my record. My record sounds like that very much on purpose. So does Ivy's, so does JT's. And Taylor, my drum, he'll have a beat tape. You know what I'm saying? Like, with it nothing but instrumental hip hop. But you know what I'm saying? It's just like everything is very much on purpose. So like whatever your vibe and your sound is, we can kind of do that. And that came out of like just necessity. We had already built that for ourselves on a very small scale. But when COVID happened and we couldn't gig, when we were finally like gigging, we're finally like really playing really good shows, and same story as everybody. And when that stopped, it was like, okay, we do need to utilize our talents for other people. There's people who are still making albums, even when we weren't gigging, people were still recording music. They still needed content. That's Gage is a photographer, videographer. His girlfriend is, and Ivy, she's our keyboard player, vocal coach, background vocals. She tracks background vocals for almost every album you hear out of this county. And she's a great graphic designer. She was, it's like everyone is so individually really good, and like I feel like that's why I'm able to like trust, their vision. It's like I have a vision, but some of my vision is just like bringing it to them and allowing for the collaboration of vision to happen.
I feel like you can, like in my experience, you can trust that you're at the beginning of something that has longevity for it when you're delegating to people who are good at what they do.
Really good.
Because as a songwriter,
you
know this, and I know this, and probably every other songwriter knows this. At the beginning of your career in it, you have to be everything.
Yes.
You have to be a content provider. You've got to be a publisher and a producer. You've got to be a guitar player, a songwriter. You have to be a brand. You have to be a marketing expert. You have to be a graphic designer.
I wasn't focused on any of those things other than writing and maybe performing.
That's probably the way to do it. I think that there's a lot of. I really tried to focus.
I'm talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, Oh, at the beginning.
It's all. I'm focusing on all of it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a long time it was just like.
I'd say that's true for me too. Okay. Probably. Yeah.
Because like I just didn't even know.
Yeah, you kind of stumble into
in
it
a way.
little bit.
Like all I knew was I liked writing songs and I loved performing. But when you're a kid learning guitar on your bed in your room, you don't think about like, even if you think about like playing for people, even if you think about playing for a bunch of people one day, you never once think about like, man, I'm gonna have to like rent some lights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You never.
How much is a fog machine?
Yeah, like you're never like, man, I'm gonna have to like either get some gear or hire someone with some gear. You never have thought. And so it's just like the longer you do it, the more those. Yeah.
And then you have to be the person that seeks out the answer, and that's when you become.
Well, and it's like
a jack of all trades to some degree.
Booking shows sucks on both fronts. Either you're calling, and that whole thing sucks, because that can either be a yes, no, maybe so, or whatever, or just nothing. And when you get reached out to by maybe someone who, if it's a venue, they normally have everything pretty much. Here's the fucking lowdown on it. But someone's getting married, or someone's having a birthday, or someone's having a celebration of some sort, and they need some music, and they reach out and they're like, hey, are you available this day? If so, how much? I'm like, you have not even began to answer. You've not even There's so many questions.
Yeah.
To get to how much it costs.
Full band, how long is this set?
100%. Well, yeah, I basically just
asked. Am I bringing
asked,
the stage? Am I bringing... Yeah.
Dude, yes, dude.
Yeah.
And the fucking list goes on. And it's like, it's like every fucking answer that you have to all these questions determine how much it's going to cost. Uh-huh. If you're just asking me how much it costs for me to come fucking hang out at your wedding reception with an acoustic guitar, because that's how you asked me, that costs this much.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like, that's not what you need. And so, like, do you need, how many people are going to be there? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it going to be nighttime? Is it going to be outside? All these things affect whatever. The one question, which maybe that's why they do it, but like their one question, their answer is like 14 questions.
Yeah.
And then by then it's like, okay, it could probably be this.
Yeah. I feel like that's more in the realm of gigging and private events and stuff though. But
that's
like,
fair.
Whenever you're booking for like venues and stuff, that's a totally different animal. And I feel like you can't. I may be wrong about this, but I don't think that you can do that alone. I think you have to have someone representing you.
That's really interesting.
Even if they're imaginary.
No, it's never. Yeah, it's I am Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean by that. But like,
a friend of ours has I won't call him out, but he's got a fictional like booking agent.
Yeah.
That is hilarious because he has an entire social media for him.
It's a whole person.
Jeb Workman.
Yeah.
Likes to bird watch outside of his window. And it's awesome.
Yeah, dude.
He's got like these model photo shoots of this one guy that he
perfect.
finds randomly on the internet. And he's like, this is my guy. This is Jeb.
This is my guy. And it's just him.
And he's constantly updating.
And that's so brilliant.
Page. And what's funny about it is that it's kind of become, for his like close followers, it's become a thread for them to follow.
Right.
That's
because they're in the end.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we know about it. And they'll comment on the social media.
Making it look more real.
I'm like, Jeb, you goof.
Oh my gosh.
That's
perfect. The type of fan that's the type of fan I need.
Yeah.
I will say, like, it's funny, like, I do think that does help, but it's like it depends on where. Because some of these places are like some of these places are what? Andrew's not calling anymore? And you're like, no.
Right.
Jeb's, especially if you have someone that's not you.
Andrew's calling with a deeper voice now.
Hey, this is Andrew.
This is Jeb. How you doing?
Anyway. But it's like, especially if you actually do have someone else doing that job and they're like, well, Garrett's not calling anymore. And you're like,
yeah.
No, man, Garrett's not calling. We're like, well, I don't know if we want to do that. Like,
I've always done through email. I should probably have more of the personal.
I can't. We have a good EPK, and we're usually pretty good about updating it once a year, and changing it to whatever current campaign, look where we have or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just don't ever get a lot of wins through email. It's like the part of me that shines is the part of me that's fucking never shutting up. Right. It's like if I can get you in a conversation with me,
that's a good point.
You will find a date on your calendar.
That's a good
point. My band. But if I'm just the fucking 12th person that's emailed you an EPK today, I'm not going to hear back from you because everything about my EPK is legitimate and looks very nice, and everything is just as professional as anyone else's. But it's like. It's kind of set up to where the type of vibe of a show I want to have, which is something like the Kessler, or you know what I mean, like, which I know that's asking for a lot, but it's like
you could do it though.
I mean, I've played there before and had a standing ovation. Yeah, absolutely. I opened up for Corey Morrow there, and then we wrote a song in the green room afterwards.
That's awesome.
It was awesome.
Kessler's a dream of mine.
It is where you should play, and it is where I should play more.
I knew one of the bookers there. A friend of mine, Cameron Ray.
Yeah.
He works there and has for on and off for years. He's also a songwriter, wonderful songwriter. But I was working with him at the time, and we were going to try to have our release show there, and then wanted to have like a big name open up for me.
Wow. Like David Ramirez.
Yeah.
No, it's like
it's please, like, I'll pay you whatever you want.
Noah Gunderson. Opening up for Andrew Holmes.
yeah. Just Andrew Holmes at the top with special guests and big letters.
Yeah, Elvis.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the idea, and I think conceptually it would have worked, except for everyone would have left after the first act. But whatever.
You should have just been like, Noah's following me.
Yeah.
I ain't opening up for him.
I'll open up on my release night for someone else. That would actually be better. But I'd require that they were just acoustic and I was full band.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Are you cool to keep chatting for a minute?
Sure.
I gotta take a bathroom break.
Do it.
All right. How long have you known Taylor Oakes?
Ooh. I think I met him in 2016.
Where?
In Abilene. I think it was when he was... I'd have to confirm that with him, but I think it was right when I moved back from Tennessee, and then he was running. To my knowledge, the first time I met him, I think he would confirm this, but he was at a Abilene Craft Fair, or the People Parties Production Craft Fair, craft show. I don't know what they called it. It's been a while. But by Jen and Forrest Harmel, he provided sound for that, and he was going to ACU at the time. And he and I talked a little bit, and I didn't know how good of a guitar player he was or anything. But Jen had been like, oh, he's great, it's Taylor Oakes, like, y'all, he's new to town kind of thing. Because he's originally from Midland, I think, or Odessa, one of the two. And we kind of hit it off a little bit. It was, I think during that time I was like, I was a little bit full of myself, and I was like, I'm the Abilene guy or whatever.
We don't need. You met him, and you're like, we don't need you here.
It's like, I'm sure you're okay. And then when I heard him, I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
Because he's so good. Yeah. He's so talented.
He's undeniably good.
And furthermore than that, like his guitar steez is obviously amazing, but harmonica, he's insanely good at that. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't really start. He and I became close friends like pretty quick after that. I think just immediately. You meet somebody and you're like, okay, Yeah, and then you get to know him real quick and you're like, all right, I'm an idiot.
Me and him were talking about this the other day. Like, once you saw how good he was, you're instantly like, oh yeah, we could be homies.
Yeah.
But not really before then.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I've also noticed that the people that I have the biggest first reaction to, where I'm like, this guy, I'm the closest friends with as soon as I get over that, which is typically pretty quick because I recognize that inside of myself. But
we're all kind of walking around the same way.
Yeah.
And that pisses me off.
Yeah. But I'm special though.
Exactly. We can't.
You can't be a songwriter too. That's my thing.
This town isn't big enough for the 7 of us.
Right.
It's like, yes, it is.
Yeah,
it totally is.
It's too big, actually.
And it's honestly us against everybody else.
Right, yeah. But no, he was great. And then what's been really cool about my relationship with Taylor, who's one of my closest friends, you know that, T.O., I feel like he started songwriting after the era that he and I and John Hester at the time, like that was the most gigging I've done, and it was like an era where, I mean, it was predominantly in Abilene and like the occasional Dallas something, but like there felt like some kind of momentum for us because we were one of a very small group of people that were doing gigs, and so in the tiny live music community that there was in Abilene,
right,
we were, you know, big fish in that little pond.
100%.
And so
y'all were the fish.
We were the only few.
Well, y'all were like, y'all were definitely, y'all were the ones worth going and seeing for sure, is what I meant by that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Like anytime any of three of y'all were somewhere, it was like worth going to see for sure.
Yeah. And Taylor at the time started off in our group, doing harmonica and lead guitar, and I think that's where a lot of us started getting our chops, like stage chops and stuff like that.
Together.
Yeah, and there was a lot of alcohol involved and forgotten nights that I lived and all that kind of, you know, rock star bullshit.
Yeah.
But I got really close with Taylor during that time, and that I think I picked up on how fun it is to work with someone who knows what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
And he picked up on like maybe the more wild songwriter kind of
it's a different
mentality.
Ethos for sure.
And it's not what I live anymore, but at the time I was definitely, you know, reckless.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
well, you had to go out there.
Unabashed youth, creative, misunderstood young man kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I watched him start to write songs, and the first few songs that he wrote were already as good as the songs I was writing 5 or 6 years into this. So he picked it up super quick, and that's been really cool to watch. And then just like his dedication to practice is unlike anybody
Untouched.
I've ever seen. Wake up at 4 in the morning, practice for 2 hours.
It would be Woodshed.
Yeah, that's a good one. Tia Woodshed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah,
as a friend, as a songwriter,
Same.
and as a musician,
every time he's in town, he stays here.
Yeah.
If he'll come in and he plays for 1,800 different bands. He'll come in.
Not even an exaggeration.
Yeah, he'll come in, play for so and so, wherever.
Yep.
And it'll be like, yeah, there was like 50 people there that didn't do anything. And he'll come, we'll watch King of the Hill, and he'll crash on the couch. And then he'll come in and be like, yeah, there was 1,100 people there tonight.
I know, man. He plays such a wide variety.
Yeah, and like but we have the same night regardless.
Yeah.
He is unaffected.
Yes.
Like if he has a good time, he comes in. And he's excited to share the good time. You know.
Yeah.
But like even if it's a bad time, he's kind of like the same amount of excited.
Here's why, though. I'll tell you. It's because he loves the art of storytelling, which you and I have told this.
And he knows that. He knows how to hook me in. He knows how to hook me in. He can
spin a web unlike anybody else.
And he knows that I'll sit there the whole time.
If it's a bad night, he's going to have a story out of it. And if it's a good night, he's going to have a story out of it.
Oh, man.
And so I think that's what maybe keeps him humble no matter what, is that his focus
because he's so ready about just telling you about it.
Yeah. Tell me the twist in the night.
Oh, man. And then...
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Wonderland Records. Wonderland Records is a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space based in Clyde, Texas. You can ask for dates and ask for a tour at Instagram at _Wonderland Records _. Thank you, Wonderland Records.
Yeah, I feel like Tia's the kind of guy that'll like go to the bathroom for 3 minutes and come back and be like, y'all won't believe what just happened.
100%.
And you're like,
and it's like,
let's go, dude. The story's gonna be longer than the trip was.
100%.
Yeah.
And worth every
breath.
breath.
He's so good at it. It's always funny, and it's always like funny in the timeless kind of way, not funny in like a cheap way. It's like he'll find, and I think that's what makes him a great songwriter too.
Yeah.
Is he'll find like the interesting part and know when to say it.
Yes.
Like he'll hold off,
build
it up, and then
and he knows like when he's like telling a story to me, he'll like go into like actor mode, and he knows that I'll just follow him there with it, and so he'll like do like purposeful pauses and like big reveals and stuff, and I'm just and I'll just lose it. Oh man, he come whenever.
The thing is, he does so shy. And he's not shy. He's like soft spoken.
He's just reserved.
Yeah. But when he reveals what's going on,
it's a big reveal.
It's amazing.
It's comedic gold every time.
I love that kid. He's a good guy.
He showed me so many, just because like, a couple times a month he'll come in and it's just him in a backpack and his guitar case and sit down, and I always have King of the Hill waiting for him. And maybe make him a sandwich or something. And we'll sit down, and like almost every time I'll just randomly pick the guitar up and do like kind of fake through a country lick, and he'll look at me and I'll be like, how do I do that the right way? And he'll show me.
Yeah.
And like I've learned like 5 or 6 like really really good, like just traditional country licks that I was always doing incorrectly or I couldn't do at all. And he was like, "Yeah, just do it like this." And I was like, "Oh shit, all right."
Wow, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he'll show you, man. And like, it was surprising to him. I don't know, maybe it's just like the assumption of everyone's ego, maybe, because it's easy to assume, that someone that looks, and I don't know, I do have an ego, so it's easy to assume that that's always turned on, maybe.
Sure.
But if I'm sitting on my couch and we're just watching cartoons, it's not on anymore. You know what I mean? It's just me and you're just chilling and watching cartoons. Yeah. And so after the first 5 or 6 times of him staying over here, I eventually like asked him to show me something on the guitar, and he showed me, and I was like having trouble doing it. And he was like, "Man, I really didn't think like you would have."
You seem like an excellent guitar player.
Well, it's like I'm good at what I do, but like I was asking him to show me something not easy.
Yeah.
I was like, it was not. That's why I was asking him to show it to me. Like it was very intricate, and I was trying to do it the right way. And he was like,
he'll practice one tiny sound slowly for hours.
Yes, though. I know. And I was trying to do the whole thing in one time. Yeah. And he was like, man, I'm kind of surprised that like that's kind of hard for you to do. I was like, yeah, it's like not easy to do. Like whatever it is. Like I mean, I can do it now.
I have 5 fingers.
Like, yeah, dude. It's like that whole lick is like hard.
One of my favorite Taylor Oak stories. I'll preface this with I love this about Taylor, that as soon as I have introduced him to any part of my family, he is family to them. Yeah. And so my family, both mom's side and dad's side, talk about Taylor all the time. Because the second I introduced him to my aunt in like the Trophy Club area of Dallas, like one time introduced him. She was like, "Well, come over, stay anytime." And he was like, these dates are the dates I'm coming back through this area."
Yeah.
And he stayed over there more times than I ever have at my aunt's house that he met like one time. And he's got probably a closer relationship with them. And I love that. But there was this one time, because he's real close with my family too, my like immediate family, my mom and my dad. And my mom does this thing where she acts aloof, I guess, sometimes, right? And she cooked a casserole one time. This is a little gross, but she cooked a casserole one time. I wasn't there.
And there was little toes and fingers in it.
There was a Band-Aid
in
the casserole, and my cousin was lucky enough to bite into it. And she pulls a Band-Aid out of her mouth, and she goes, "Is this a Band-Aid?" And my mom was like, No, absolutely not. And she was like, "Were you wearing a Band-Aid before you cooked?" And she was like, "Yeah." And it, like, I don't know what happened to it.
But that's not it.
Taylor Oaks is sitting at the table watching the whole thing and just eating and not saying a word, and doesn't stop eating and gets second helpings afterwards. He was like, "Well, there's only one Band-Aid, and it was found." But Taylor Oaks will take up any opportunity for hospitality, 100%. Whether that's food or a couch or whatever. And he's a perfect guest too.
He's a perfect guest, but he's like the master. He's the master traveler. He takes the bus when he can. He takes the train when he can.
I've dropped him off at the bus station.
The motherfucker has never stayed in a hotel room once. He has a friend in every town.
Yep.
I'm just lucky I'm
traveler.
his friend in this town.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Man, that's
he's
so
great.
great. So the first time I met him is when we were making Dane's album up at Notion.
Yeah.
Before they changed it to Wonderland.
I didn't even know they changed it.
So they sold the small building. They're just in the big building now.
Okay, and now it's called Wonderland.
Mm-hmm, that's what they're calling it.
Okay.
And anyway, when we were making records in that small building where you made that Kaiser EP, he was like, I'd heard about him through talking to you before, and I heard his name a bunch, and I'd heard through he jams with Dane Pack a bunch, and we were making Dane's record, so he was like, yeah, T.O.'s gonna come in, cool. And he came in, and he sat, mic'd his stuff up in the live room. He sat in the control room with me, and literally did any fucking thing I could think to ask him to do. Like, immediately. Like,
on the guitar.
On the guitar.
Yeah.
On the guitar. So, like, anyway, gets his tone set, gets his tubes warmed up. Here's his song, jam through it a little bit. He'd already been working on it and stuff. Here, play it, Okay, you're warmed up. Let's make a take. And, like, okay, that's a pretty good take. Let's do a solo. He's like, what do you want me to do? And I would literally go, like, I'm thinking, like, and he'd be like, okay. And he would just do that. He would do exactly what I would say.
Yep.
And I would give him more direction than just like making noises and stuff too. We really dove in there, but like the first time we met, we sat down and sculpted the lead parts to Dane's whole fucking album together. Mm-hmm. And anything that I could ask for him to do, he immediately did without any hesitation. Yep. Pretty much on the nose.
Yep. Yeah, he's excellent at that.
There were some timing things because he's doing it correctly, talking about maybe like a honky tonk song or something. Mm-hmm. There'd be some timing things where I'd want it to like drag and stuff, and so like talking about that was really interesting, just because I knew that he was doing it correctly, and he knew that I knew that he was doing it, and he knew that I was asking him to do it kind of wrong a little bit, and like where is that line okay for someone who's like that good to be like, I don't know if I want to do it not right. And it's like, yeah, but we're not doing things right now. Mm-hmm. Is the point. And I don't know, he kind of started having fun with that, thinking about it that way. He came in so prepared, it was like, let's be, you're so good, let's be experimental, mm-hmm. He's such a treat.
Yeah, he really is.
When he came and stayed and played the other day, the next day I was playing in Fort Worth, and he had been gigging for like 5 days in a row, and he's like, I'm gonna come out and see y'all, and I knew that he was like tired of gigging, but JT had a gig, and so I needed a lead player, and I called him, and he did the homework with like 4 hours of time. He showed up for sound check.
He never shows up unprepared.
Dude, he was like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And he really saved our booties that night. And
I've been lucky to have him as a part of like my local band.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's been like blowing up lately.
Well, yeah, he just takes
so
the
happy.
gig. He just takes the gig, man. Yeah. That's the thing.
I'm so happy for him, but at the same time, I'm like, I've texted him several times and been like, hey man, like I'm gonna have to start training someone else because which is great.
Sure.
I love that for it. Like I do. I have no bad feelings towards that at all.
Yeah, for sure.
Like when what's that saying? When the tide rises, all boats float, or something like that.
I think that's very true.
And it like, if he's catching a good vibe, like I would be an idiot to discourage that.
Yeah, he also
that'd be so counterproductive.
Yeah,
he not celebrate anybody in my circle's wins. It would not make sense.
There really are so few and far between for any of us, Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to celebrate anybody's.
Okay, do you want the last bit of this?
Y'all, we are drinking.
Good thing it is midnight.
I will say though about burning that midnight oil.
Yep.
T.O. just needs dates from you, and he'd go.
Yeah, he does a really good job about that. I think
That's
that
all he needs.
what's nice about like the band practices that we're gonna be doing is that like I can get the utility of the band practice for me and the 4 other guys that are a part of it, excluding T.O., is that we can all like find our pulse and our jam and whatever, and Taylor's he's gonna practice on his own, and maybe I have one practice session with him beforehand,
Yeah.
and he's good to go.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't require the same level of attention. Well, I'm really mainly speaking for myself because my band is amazing. Everyone in it knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But like I need to know that the when to lead and when to follow, I guess, when it comes to being the front man with stuff. Because there are sometimes I want my band to slow down with me when I really, articulate one thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, like everything needs to slow down for a second.
And that's a cool moment.
And this is all vocals. This is all this line. And then y'all come in when needed.
Yeah.
And that is a point when they need to follow me. But there's a lot of points in the song where I have to follow the beat and I have to like kind of just touch in and out. And
Yeah.
so a lot of band practice that I'm noticing is me finding my pace in coordination with maybe like drums specifically and bass.
Is this kind of your first time with like an ensemble consistently?
Oh, for sure.
What does it look like as far as like what are the instrumentation basically like your latest album? Is that what's happening on stage?
So yeah, so far. And I don't even know if I'll need that much. At some point I'd like to have a violinist.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you.
Because
it wasn't really on your last record, but it's kind of a through line with other stuff.
It's on, I think, 3 songs because Abby Gunderson played.
Right. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yep. And she also did vocals.
Maybe you did tell me that, but you always wait after we drink the whole thing, yeah.
To tell you all the cool, fun secret stuff.
That is really cool.
She was a delight to work with, too.
I bet.
So, and she did the vocals on Boomerang, and where she really shined the most, though, was The Flowers of June, the last song on that record, Garden. It felt pretty good, and then we sent it to her to do vocals and violin, and I cried the first time I heard it. Like, she built something totally different on top of it, and I kind of wish in the final mixing there was more of her vocals in it, just because she has such an old style of harmony that stands out as familiar and modern at the same time.
Yes.
And she does that a lot in Noah Gunderson's early stuff. I guess it's more prominent. She probably does the same stuff, but it's more prominent in that kind of folk vein stuff that he started in.
Right.
And anyways, that song though, go back and listen to it now that you know that's her vocals and her violin. And she also did the violin on Boomerang, and she did the violin on And If There's Any Vocals on Passing Conversation, that like song that it's basically a prayer. It's soft as a prayer kind of vibe.
I would have never known that her and I were on the same album if you didn't just tell me that.
Yeah, well, there you go, man.
Well, I'm sure you've told me that before, like I said.
I probably have. I also wrote, my goal with that record, and this is not for the sake of name dropping because, you didn't even know this. You were on the record, so I don't talk about this a lot.
Right.
But my goal personally, and with Zach Balch, the producer of that record, was we wanted this to be a massive stepping stone into like the ears and eyes of people that work with other people, like a networking kind of thing.
Right.
And it worked out so organically that it wasn't even difficult to do, which was so cool. But I wrote The War of Attention with David Ramirez.
Wow.
And it was, I brought him the idea, and he wrote it with me and I would still say I probably wrote 80% of it.
Sure.
But some of the lines that he contributed to it, like hook, line, and sinker, that part of the song,
line.
It's a perfect song. Or perfect line for that song. I said algorithmically curated clickbait, which I loved the way that flowed. Algorithmically curated clickbait. And he was like, that's really good. but let's add why that's good. And so he said hook, line, and sinker.
Yep.
And it fit in that little spot perfectly.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about the vocabulary of it all and like using bait and hook, line, and sinker like that. You know, like it's so fucking brilliant.
And I think that he called. I wrote this line earlier in that song that he pointed out as that exact same thing, and it was before I had kind of realized that that's what I was doing.
Right.
Because sometimes you just this
if you're doing it the right way,
rules,
yeah, exactly.
You're doing it according to the rules that you don't even know you're really writing.
Right.
But the first instance of that in that song is bullet point ammunition, which I thought was he pointed that out as really good because it was I was talking about the news anchors and they have bullet points that they need to hit, but they did it targeting, their political opponents or whatever.
Right.
So it's bullet point ammunition. So it's the dual usage of bullet points and then obviously ammunition. That was a really fun to write song to write with him.
Yeah.
And he not only did he point out kind of some of maybe the things that I was already doing that I didn't know I was doing, but he finished some of the thoughts that I'd started when it came to those like dual meanings without really like solidifying or finishing the thought.
Right.
And he would go, "Oh, you're saying bait right here. There's a dual meaning there."
Right.
And so let's add a cliche, hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Right. So he recognized that as a setup and was able to implement it.
Did you realize? Of course, you knew the song wasn't finished. Is that part of why you knew the song wasn't finished? Did you realize that there wasn't, or was that revealed to you when y'all were working on it together?
There was actual blank spots in the song.
Cool. Yeah.
That I knew like this needs to be filled in.
Yeah.
And then also David Ramirez has a way of bringing attitude.
Yeah, it's a delivery thing.
Yeah. And I knew that the War of Attention needed a little bit of attitude.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, just like conceptually being like this and this person. Yeah, if I could do this with this person, it could be right.
Right.
I understand that completely, and it's kind of like it's almost like a really broad connection, but it's like you can just see how that would like help.
And this record was the catalyst for me to be able to have, like not only could I think, oh, if only I could have David on this song, but I had grown to that place in my career where I was like, that's tangible.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I can reach out to this guy.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, man,
and
here's
he probably
a song.
want to. Yeah.
And he was like, great, let's write it. And I was like, okay. So we met up at a studio space in Austin and like, I don't know, 2.5 hours. And the song was 90% instead of 70%. And then I finished it in the end and sent it to him, and he was like, it's perfect. Sounds great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that record had a lot of different kind of stepping stone connections for me. Abby Gunderson, David Ramirez, and then a lot of like local Dallas people too. Like there's a young lady that sings. Her name is Taylor Nick. She sings with Leon Bridges and David Ramirez and Paul Cawthon and all those kind of like Charlie Crockett and all those, and people in Charlie Crockett's band also were a part of Mayo.
Yeah, the
Mayo
drummer.
Valdez, yeah, he's great too.
Great.
I love him. Yeah,
he was tracking that day. I was tracking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you had multiple drummers on there, though, right?
Yeah, him and then the guy that's in my band and also my current music director.
Wow, okay.
A close friend of mine.
Yeah.
Casey Reed did
he's
drums.
great.
He did amazing. I think what I like about...
It was cool to meet Mayo, dude.
Mayo's great. He's so cool. And then like later that year, they like were playing in time, like Madison Square Garden. And
that's crazy.
Opening up for Willie Nelson and stuff. Yeah. And so like the record that I was able to make had so organically connected with people I would consider one realm above where I was at the time.
Sure.
In a way that the reason that it mattered so much was not only that I had friends like you
sure.
that whenever I said, "Hey, would you mind?" You're like, "I'll be there no matter
Yeah,
what."
yeah.
And that was thankfully the reaction I had from a lot of the friends that I was like, "I'd love for you to be a part of this."
Yeah.
But also that was the reaction from these people that I'd considered like
Maybe more like acquaintances than friends.
well, people I looked up to.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that I'd been listening to Abby Gunderson and David Ramirez since I was 16.
That's awesome, dude.
You know, and to be able to say, you know, yeah, they were a part of this record, and you know, one of the songs was written with them, and
gosh darn, they liked it.
they liked it, and I enjoyed hanging out with them.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't get to hang out with Abby so much, but we talked a few times, and we really just bounced stuff back and forth. But
Sure.
she's a pro, man.
Yeah.
She's working with somebody of that caliber.
Yeah. That when her and her brother played at the Kessler when we were both there, it was like the best acoustic performance I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And I was only privy to like a couple of. I knew that I was gonna love the show, but I'd only really heard a handful of Noah songs, and the whole freaking set, dude.
There's
So good.
so few of his songs that I don't like
No.
really enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and then also really enjoy.
Do you
Even
like
his
his?
side
You're
projects.
liking his newer stuff?
Yeah, I think it's. You know, it's interesting. We were talking about the writing process and how it evolves. I think. I don't have any idea, but my thoughts on the way that his writing has changed is that he's probably he just got married. He's probably in a similar position in terms of the evolution of his songwriting, where it's show up and reanalyze the rules.
Yeah.
And so he's coming up with songs that are a lot more Leonard Cohen in their essence. Like they're a lot more poetically derived and soft, and like there's always a pulse behind the lyrics and stuff. And then some of them are free form writing too, so they don't even have choruses or anything like that. They just you know, it's just a thought that continues and continues until it ends.
Yeah.
Which is, those are some of my favorite kind of songs. You've
Yeah.
got a few of those.
Yeah, but so does
And
like
I've
Towns
got a
Van
few of
Zandt.
And
Dane has a couple of those.
like I think my favorite of, do you have a favorite song that you've written?
Of
Or
my
one that's
own?
connecting with you right now?
I don't think so. No. Do you?
I've got one that, Battle and Bruise on that latest
Wow,
record.
yeah, such a great one.
That one I wrote like 7 years ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
It's the one that I, like, for years, and I don't know that I do it so much now, but it still comes out. But for years, I would literally, if I was freaking out about something, I'd pick up the guitar and, like, play that song, and it would act as a mantra for me to, like, talk myself off the ledge a little bit.
Wow.
And so that song is connected with me deeper than any other song I've ever written. Do you have one that's kind of like been a go-to on a, like, a personal level?
The last one I wrote last year, before the new year or whatever. Yeah, it resonates with me. I find myself playing it for me, you know.
Yeah.
Which a lot of the times, like, your newest song kind of is, and that's not necessarily the newest one I've written, but that's the last, like, really, really good one to me anyway. I'll show it to you here in a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm sure that'll change too. I'm sure, like, whatever I'm feeling towards that song, like, my life will change, and so, like, that'll change, and maybe it'll be like a different song. But there isn't one that's like that old of mine that, like, reoccurs that I can think of really. Used to Sharks did that for me.
I like that one a lot.
But then growing out of whatever mentality I was in when I was really resonating with that, now it's like sadder to me now than it was. It was like cathartic to present it. It was like cathartic to, like, tap back into that feeling and, like, be like, yes, this is the truth and stuff. And now I still like singing that song. But thinking about the motions of it all, that what it took to go through the things that I'm writing it about, or that I wrote it about. Yeah, it's like bums me out.
Interesting.
But and that's only if I'm like, if you're allowing yourself to connect to what you're writing, which, you know, if you're in front of a good audience, you will allow yourself to do that. I'm not always in front of the best audience, but so sometimes I could just kind of just sing that song. But sometimes it's like that song used to be like a really good feeling for me, and now it kind of sucks.
What do you think the best song is that you've written? Like when you think about from a songwriter's perspective, lyrically and melodically, and like the concept of your song being fully articulated. What was the song that you think you did that the best in?
It's a song that's not released yet, and it's not recorded yet, but I've had it for a couple of years, quite a few years, and it's called Everybody.
Okay.
And you've heard it. I usually start solo shows with it, especially if it's kind of like, especially if they're listening. Because the first line is, everybody's dying or getting divorced.
Yep.
I think that's probably the best song I've ever written.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking me.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that checks out, man.
Yeah.
The first time I heard that one, you and I were playing at that retirement home.
That's right.
And
they were all close to death. And
I know.
all of their friends have already died. And I go, everybody's dying or getting divorced.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
What was cool about that show is you bringing that out. I think that like playing it at long-term care facilities or old folks homes, whatever you're gonna call them. As a songwriter, you go in there and you go, like, there's a bunch of topics that maybe these people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and death is definitely at the top of that list. You know, just crudely, that's you walk in there, and you're like, I don't half of my inventory is gone now.
Yeah,
Like,
and I did take away any of the gruesome, like really on the nose, like storytelling things about death. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Right.
But I did instantly bring up death in a funny way.
And they loved it, man. That's what I thought was so cool about it, is like maybe some of those taboo topics, like when brought up the right way.
Exactly.
People are like, oh, it's better that you did bring it up. You know?
We were the only people in the room that didn't have white hair.
Yeah.
You and I. And my sister and her mom showed up too. Do you remember that?
I do remember
They
that.
were coming. They live in Natchez, Mississippi. And they were coming to hang for the week or whatever here in Abilene. And I happened to pick that gig up with you as they were coming through. So I was like, come on by. And so they walk in. They've only ever seen me in like maybe a listening room once or twice, but they've usually only ever seen me in like bars. And so they walk in, and it's like as bright as a dentist office in there, and it's just you and I and a bunch of 90-year-old people. They're like, what the fuck is going on? But they enjoyed it because everyone was just listening, you know?
Yeah, I still think of that as, you know, I've seen you perform in maybe, 10 or more different places.
That may have been my best set ever.
I think that was my favorite set that you've ever done. And I think the best part of that set is at the end of it, because you were opening up for me, and I went and did it afterwards.
Yeah.
Because you knew that was one of your best sets.
Yes, I did.
And you handed the guitar off to me and said, beat that.
Yeah, so I was quoting, have you ever seen Great Balls of Fire? There's this famous rock and roll story about, there was this show with Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis. And Chuck Berry he'd had hits on the radio already. But Jerry Lee was like the number one on the, hit maker at the time. And so in the contract, it was like Chuck Berry's closing, and Jerry Lee's like, I'm not going out there before anybody. And pretty much they made Jerry Lee go out there, and he had the best set of his life, and he set the piano on fire. Like, middle of the stage, set the piano on fire, and then when he walks by, this is what I told you when I handed you your guitar, he walks by Chuck Berry and he goes, follow that, killer.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect in that room because they were great listeners, and it was a special night. It's a totally different type of night.
Yeah, and I was honored to be there. I was leaning into like the act of it all.
Yeah. And I like that you threw a lot of comedy songs into that. And that was my first introduction into a lot of the songs that you've written that were comedy songs.
Well, it's like usually when you and I...
amazing.
Well, thank you. But like usually when you and I are like in that world of songs, it's like not... Old people don't want to cry about death. They want to laugh about it.
Yeah.
We're in a room full of old people. Usually you and I are in a room full of people half their age. Mm-hmm. You know, like, they'll... I don't know. Even if they'll ignore it, it's like no one in that room is going to ignore anything that you say.
Right.
And so it was like, I don't know. I didn't want to make a bunch of old ladies sad.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be like, I wanted them to leave being like, I'm really glad we left the house for this. Mm-hmm. I've had to walk an old lady outside of her house before and get her in the car and put, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was easier for me to jump in the car and drive to Dallas from here than it was for those old ladies to just go down the street. Mm-hmm. And like I didn't want them getting in the car feeling old.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't even think I put that much forethought into it necessarily in the moment.
Yeah, you would have to have written songs for it. You kind of knew that like this ilk of songs were going to be the ones that would work in this scenario.
I just knew that everybody that I know that is that age likes country songs and likes funny songs.
Yeah.
And I have some of those. And so I just leaned into, and I think I even played some serious country songs that you probably hadn't heard of mine until then. And it's just because, like, I don't know, like downtown Dallas isn't the place to show that. You know what I'm saying? Like at 2 a.m. or whatever. That was an interesting show, and it was probably one of my favorite solo performances I've ever had.
Well, and they had that grand piano there too that you ended up.
And I was like, I'm not standing beside this while it's covered up like an old Corvette in a garage. Right. Like, let's use this fucking thing. It sounded great.
It did. Yeah, it really did.
Follow that, killer. Let's wrap this up.
All right, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Fuck yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Let's go get some more whiskey.
All right.